discussion was, how do we make sure that we in tourism maintain the human element, which I feel is what the essence of the tourism industry is, but do advance to a state where we can actually meet the demands of the modern traveler. And I know the modern traveler walks around with his cell phone. If it's not an iPhone that elites, it's an Android, and they want fast reaction, they want immediate reaction to their booking requests, etc., etc. They want to be in time all the time. Namibia sells itself as a country where you detach yourself and you unwind, and that's what we were trying to sell to people also during COVID and after COVID, to say forget about all the stresses and the hassle of technology, just come to Namibia and unwind. But that in itself does not sell Namibia. We need to get with it. We need to, and Prosper convinced me that we need to be on that technological highway to be able to make sure that Namibia as a destination going forward, even if it's sustainable and even with our focus on the human element and the human capital, that we need to engage technology to get us there. So Prosper, let us know what the people think.
Great. So we'll still let you guys finish up for those that need to finish up. The good thing about, I like what you just said, that we can replace the people. As you were talking, I'm, monitoring and checking to see what things, what is happening with the survey. So you realize, honestly, technology can come in, but it cannot completely take over. It is impossible. It needs to be programmed. It still needs somebody to give it direction. Even the survey that you guys just took, I had to code those questions and so on. Somebody has to always be in the background. So, yeah, I agree with you, Gitta, that we can't replace the people at all. I do think, though, that people that are not working with technology, those ones would definitely be out of a job. You're still good, All right, great. So we're going to move on to the next slide. And we're going to talk to you guys a bit about last year when Gitta and I worked on a roadmap together to try and figure out how best we could assist the tourism industry to develop in a way that really integrates what we're talking about now, the technological advances with the human capital component. And when you think of lifting up hospitality, you realize, and I already like what I started seeing in your feedback, some very creative answers coming through. And we'll have a chat about that because it shows us your thoughts and so on. What I want to put out there from the beginning is you guys are also welcome to engage us. So technical team, if you could just prepare 1 or 2 mics that could roam around the room so that if there are questions, if you want to give input, we're very open to that. We're just going to try and keep this conversational. With that said, I trust that the slide is on the screens, right? Because I can't see the screens from here. Great. We also did a survey at that time, and we asked that question, what is one word which describes good service to you? And you see that the outstanding words there were excellence, satisfaction, passion, friendliness, and so on. And for most of you that have traveled Africa, that is common. When you're traveling around the African continent, you almost expect people to be friendly, you almost expect people to be nice, but that's because it's also part of our culture, right? You realize that we have a very accommodating, a welcoming culture, that anybody that comes from anywhere is pretty much already welcomed into the family, so to say. However, what was lacking is integrating that into professional advocacy and being able to produce quality service with understanding and at the same time be friendly and be wonderful. So that's pretty much what that slide was about. We're just trying to collect information from the people that were in the room at the time. We actually did like a brainstorming session where the people gave that input, and pretty much you would realize there that all the qualities that I mentioned there, they were not so much about education. It wasn't so much about you need training, you need this. You see that they picked characteristics which are character-driven things about people. And again, to Gitta's point, hospitality and tourism is a people business. And you can see that within those responses. We can move to the next slide. How sustainable is Namibian tourism? I want to give this over to Gitta because she's working with tourism establishments and hospitality establishments who are trying their best to find a way to balance sustainability in their properties and their way they're doing service. So Gitta, maybe you could just shed a bit more light, especially on this specific slide, because as you guys can see there, the people that were in the room were about 58 participants who took part, and you can see the bigger bunch believe that our sustainable levels within Namibia at the time was between 31 and 60%. That is far from being enough. And these were industry leaders, and if they believe this at this time, how much more work do we still need to do to ensure that we are headed in a trajectory that is actually sustainable? So, Gitta, maybe you could just add a little bit onto this slide if you can.
Yeah, we have to remember, Prosper, that we did that survey sort of on the first year out of COVID, so people were still a bit negative and shell-shocked in terms of what the pandemic did to the tourism industry, which locked doors, as we all know. We don't want to go back there. But people also saw, and that's why we came to the skills sufficiency that we had, because we had lost many of the people that we had trained for the tourism industry to industries that seemed safer in terms of a sustainable and a guaranteed job environment. And that's why people were, and I was actually shocked to see the outcome of that slide, to see people still so negative in terms of the sustainability of tourism. And I think if we had done the survey today, it would have looked differently and more positive. But that was reality at the time, and that was still the reality that we're grappling with now, is that quick changes in tourism, be it political change or a policy change of government, can very quickly influence tourism to a very negative degree, and the guarantees of a sustainable and a thriving and developing industry as such has always been at the back of our mind. But having said that, we still are committed to, and that's where the challenge that we have, and the congress that we had last year was putting the academia together with the industry in terms of tourism, because of that huge mismatch. Now, you've heard in the previous conversation that we had that Namibia does have 2 universities that run beautiful tourism courses. We've got a whole range of private sector tourism academies. We've got vocational training centres, not only in Windhoek, but in the north and at the coast, etc. So we've got a lot. I think there were about just under 30 different training providers in the room with us last year, all providing beautiful tourism courses, and very often their students would not get a job in tourism, and that to us was a shocker. We basically also had people from the tourism industry that now had reverted in developing their own little academies, or in-house training academies, as they called them, because of the skills mismatch and the perception of, and talking about theory and practice. For us in tourism, practical training is basically the strongest model in terms of the division of the training, and we tried to find a way of getting the tourism courses of the universities and the colleges, the academia, to actually match our tourism seasonality, and that's where the challenge lies. So mostly when they can go to the internships or the practical courses, that's in the midst of our high season where our tourism industry doesn't have supervisors or mentors to actually train them. And that was our biggest challenge, and we were actually relieved to see that the challenge is not only here in Namibia, but also in the international world, where the international world, however, works on a different training model. They actually have much more focus on the vocational training in tourism, and that's something that we were trying to push here in Namibia, that we make people aware of starting from scratch, joining the tourism industry, and then being lent out to vocational training centres where they go on block to courses. And I think that buy-in of staff basically starting from scratch would also get us a much better approach or commitment from the tourism staff then trained at various sources, being part of the industry, building up wherever they are, instead of them sort of coming out of a course, and I'm not talking to you directly, but people doing their masters and PhDs in tourism, but having never carried a plate. That's the challenges that we sit, that mismatch in terms of the skills development or the skill set that we're trying to do in tourism, still prevalent here in Namibia, and that's what we're trying to change with the partnership that we have with the European and other. We've got a program running with the United States as well, where one of our training institutes here has got links with the American market to send people over there to expose them to the real tourism world as such.
Thank you for actually bringing up the educational aspects of our sector, where you start to see that a lot of students sometimes stay in one lane almost. So whether they start with academia and they kind of just go through academia, and then some are kind of stuck within the practical structures. And you see in the next coming slide, we're going to talk a bit about the integration of the two. I think what's positive, and I like what you mentioned about, had we done this survey today, it might have actually turned out different, is that on that slide you also see that the second largest group of the participants say that our level was between 61 and 90%. So that was optimistic. However, I must mention that this was their opinion. if we really have to look at matters on the ground, you'd realize we have a long way to go with regards to sustainability. And this is something that was also discussed during this workshop, that we needed to find ways to develop localized solutions. And talking about localized solutions, this is going to lead me to my next slide. You see there, we started brainstorming a tourism training roadmap. And I think what you're seeing on the screen right now, if I'm not mistaken, this was our brainstorming map, or I'd almost say design ideology behind what you'll probably see after this one. And on this slide, what we were trying to do here was to understand the problem in context, to understand if the problem can link to the solution. And you see that the way we did it, this is similar to a typical business model, where you do have to consider all your variables in all contexts that you possibly can identify. And then from there on, you try to start creating a solution backwards. So it's almost like you're starting from the solution to go and find a solution. Whereas a lot of people, we tend to sometimes focus on the problem. So what I mean by solution to solution is we realize we need better training, we need integration in the development of the tourism sector, especially for training purposes. But how do we then get to that? So we almost start from what we're trying to accomplish and see how does it look in practice. And it's exactly what Gitta said. You do have sometimes PhD students or people that have gone as far up as, I don't know, master degrees and so on in certain parts of tourism, and they've never carried a plate, and yet they're working in hospitality sector. So they lack certain understandings of the practical sections. And we worked through this map, which leads me to the next slide that I'm going to hand over to Gitta again to just speak a bit about, which were the next steps of what can we do practically as a Namibian tourism industry. And right after this is a workshop. So we're going to engage you guys, right? Going back to the initial slide that was the first one where you did the survey, and we're going to talk together. But before we do that, I'm just going to hand over to Gitta to present the roadmap. So I trust it's on the screen right now. Can you guys see it?
Yeah, it's on the screen. They just can't see it. Yeah, so all those logos that you see on the screen on the left are all the participating companies, and you would see that we didn't only focus on the tourism industry, but also corporate world, because that's who we compete against as well in terms of having lost some of our very well and qualified staff to the likes of the corporate world. But it was a very fruitful exercise because we could at that point also prove that tourism is everybody's business, and whoever is good for tourism in terms of customer care, human relations, all the attributes that you need to be able to service the tourism industry are also the key elements that people in the banks, in the corporate world are looking for. So we felt quite confident that whatever we did in terms of the tourism training roadmap would actually work for the other industries as well. It was a bit of a challenge first to get the agreement by the official academia, the people that are actually focused on tourism training, to accept people in the industry as being their partners as well as in terms of training, talking about the theoretical training and then practical training. So yes, people from the ONL Hospitality Academy, we're sitting next to the people from NUS, which is our Namibia University of Science and Technology, and you know, coming from a limited base where we only have an intake of, say, 25 to 30 students a year, obviously NUS would be worried if we from the tourism industry would now start doing our own training. But in that workshop that we had, and it was a full day of workshop and then sort of discussions a day thereafter, we actually showed them that if we all follow that tourism training roadmap and sort of take hands, and be guided by in that vehicle that we actually only found after because it was an open thing. Han, as the hospitality industry, was the host to this conference, but we said this is a tourism training roadmap for Namibia, so we wanted Namibia to own this. The vehicle that we were looking for in terms of driving this, we then agreed was our NTA, which is the Namibia Tourism Board. They set sort of unit standards for all kinds of training in Namibia, be it vocational, in mechanics, in whatever, and also for tourism. but they also are the ones that collect tourism levy. I know that Mamengula in the previous discussion just shortly referred to tourism levies that gets collected by the NTA. And in terms of building a roadmap and making it possible to fund that kind of tourism training roadmap and fund training going forward, we actually needed a pot of gold to be able to get us on the raid. I'm happy to say that after the conference, which was taking place in May last year, at about August or September, we could actually convince NTA to take on the responsibility of the driving vehicle for this tourism training roadmap, and also looking at elements that, and your previous scorecard actually showed that one of the big elements that we didn't actually focus on right in the beginning was actually to find a baseline as to where we actually are in terms of skills deficiency. It's easy to say we need staff, but we don't know exactly in which category. I know a couple of years ago we talked about needing skills in the chefing industry because Namibians can all cook, but we don't have gourmet chefs to actually service the kind of food that we saw outside in the room here. So we basically, our aim was to bring everybody to the party to say, you all have a role to play. So be it the tertiary institutes, but also the vocational training institutes and the private sector to take hands. And that's where still I see the challenge being that, and I hear from the tertiary institutes as well, where private sector is not open enough to receive students who are that have gone through, say, 1 or 2 years of theoretical training to actually then be introduced into the private sector for 6 months on an internship basis. That's where we do have challenge, and I'm very keen to hear, I'm not quite sure whether we have people from other countries, how they do it, because here in Namibia we really struggle to actually integrate the trainees as such, the theoretical trained students, into the industry without a huge disruption of supervisors that then have to leave their paid job to supervise the trainees. People don't actually have budgets for that. That's all the issues that we talked about last year in terms of really getting a roadmap where everybody has their little role to play and feed into one another, rather than to have, and we've had it in the last couple of years, where we had 30, 40 students rolled out by UNAM, which is the University of Namibia, or NUST, and being without a job. And we sort of get talked to by the training institutes to say, please, now we've trained people for your industry, but your industry doesn't absorb them. So we're very keen to hear from other sectors of industry in other countries how that absorption of theoretically trained tourism people can be taken up in the tourism industry.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Gitta. And what I would add to that is, if you look on the screen, I don't know how clearly you can see the writings under year 1, 2, and 3. I'm just going to add some of the practical steps that we actually put in there. So one was definitely the vehicle, which we're happy to have, the NTA. And then you'd see that through the vehicle, we could then start to actually then develop programs that are integrated. And then the integrated programs would need funding. And then through the vehicle, we also then source funding, whether from government or private sector. And the nice thing about the NTA currently is they actually already have good funding from the industry, and also they are subsidized by state. So it was quite a really perfect match to actually link them up with Han and a couple of other private sector institutions who are willing to carry through this roadmap. So with that said, what we were doing here was to kind of just give you guys an idea of what we have tried to do to try and mitigate the hospitality industry training and ensuring that the industry is performing at a really good, I would almost say standardized international level. We are a long way to go. Namibia has so much to still cover in terms of producing, I would say, quality service. We're friendly. We're a lovely country. Great weather. As you can see, this is supposed to be winter, but for those that are coming from Europe and other parts of the world where it gets really cold, this is like spring or almost early summer, I would say. So we have that already, but what we really need is that level of delivery that is outstanding. And I think it's possible that we can do that. With that said, we're going to go now to the survey and we're going to talk, right? So I don't know, are the mics ready for the room? I don't know if we have somebody that can pass the mic around, or we could just have them lingering around among the participants and you guys can kind of just pass them around with each other. So I'm going to view the results quickly to see what happened here. All right, so in the meantime, are there any questions or input that you would like to give. All right, Leanne.
Hi.
By the way, introduce yourself and where you come from. I know your name already and I mentioned it, but please just, introduce yourself again.
My name is Leanne Singer. Gitta, it's so lovely to meet you because I'm chair of the Hospitality Association in the Western Cape in South Africa, and I must applaud you. Just what you've put up here, if this is where you started, it is a really great investment. So firstly, I'd like some of your time offline. But to add my comments here, what we've done successfully in South Africa is we've managed to partner with skills development specialist consultants who have built the bridges between the private sector and the students. And they managed to apply for all of the funding that government makes available, because for businesses, it's the red tape that irritates us, right? We want to run businesses. We don't want to sit and fill out reams and reams of paperwork. We all want to help students, but my gosh, it's a bureaucratic nightmare. So we don't mind allowing the consultants to do the work for us. They get some of the funds that they've managed to raise. And we've been able to fund so many students in specialist fields like revenue management, chefing, front of house, and we've actually managed to earn some money for our association and pay the students just by outsourcing it to people who do this for a day job. Because between associations and running a business, we're not experts at everything, right? We try. But that's been hugely successful for us. And I'd say in the last 2 years, we've probably, through Fred Haase Cape, made sure that 200 students had work placements, and some of them have permanent jobs now in those places that they started.
Thank you very much, Leanne, for that input. Maybe before Gitta comments on that, I want to add and say that workshop we had, everybody there was actually an expert of some kind, because most of them were running training institutions. So they had bits and pieces of experience, which was really great. And I completely agree with you with trying to ensure that the funding is available and somebody can actually get that work done. I think the challenge that we came across, maybe Gitta, you could comment on this a bit more as well, as finding a balance between not doing the government's work too. Because the moment we take on such responsibility of the state, they will never take it back. I mean, the probability is very high that they would then just leave it with private sector. So as private sector, it's almost like you're playing that game of like, you want to keep moving, we got to keep doing business, as you rightfully said, profits have to be made, investments need a return. However, certain responsibilities are with state, and we were so happy that we have the NTA, which I think at this point, maybe if we push them enough, something could happen. But I think, if things are not moving in the right direction, there is potential that I think your point can be taken into consideration to see what can private sector do. But I think as much as possible, it's good to push the government rather to actually do their work, because we're paying the taxes for these things. And tourism is heavily taxed in Namibia through the Namibia Tourism Board, through the VAT schemes, even import duty for certain companies that have to import certain products. So there is heavy tax on the industry. And I think NTA actually gets also money from the industry to run their programs. So it's only right that we rather lobby or push them to actually get the job done. But thank you for that input. Yeah. It's very useful.
I just want to make one point. It's the companies that we contracted to were people who specialize in accessing state funding. Right, so it wasn't the training institutions, that the guys who know these are the energy incentives, this is the development incentives. So those were the ones that we were happy to reward because they were getting the funding for us.
Oh, I see. Okay, all right, that's useful. Maybe we could use some of those here.
Yeah. The NTA is our Namibian Training Authority, because they collect tourism levy, and not tourism levy, training levy. So for all the people over a payroll of $1 million, they have to pay 1% of their payroll over to NTA. So there's a pot of gold at NTA, money that is readily dispersible. It's just the way how, and I'm keen to talk to you about it. Namibia's got an added challenge because our Labour Act that was written in 2007 didn't make provision for interns. But it says as soon as you have somebody in your employ for more than a month or 6 months, he becomes a permanent employee. And that's why many of our industry people are also shy to actually take somebody on, because they then get, a terrible word to use, but get stuck with people that they might not take over. And many of the trainees that we've had were taken over because of the skills that they acquired. But I'm very keen, because there are some people here in the audience that have also had in-house training, and they always said, Gitta, I'd rather start somebody afresh and work according to my ethics and principles, than having preconceived ideas. And we've had a lot of engagements with our tertiary institutions where they go ahead and they call their courses, this is a tourism management course or a hospitality manager's course, and people would have walked 3 years, 4 years down the line, never having worked in tourism, but then knocking on the doors of Mr. Run from Kasada to say, please, I want to be your manager now. And those challenges could have been overcome had we integrated the theoretical and the practical part from the word go. But and that's why I say there's a mismatch between the skills development and the type of skills that are being offered at tertiary institutions without enough opportunity. And I'm not blaming the tertiary institutions only, because our industry also doesn't provide enough opportunities for youngsters to actually gain that practical knowledge because of the challenges that we have, that they say, no, I'm not going to employ you because then I'm stuck with you after 6 months because Labour Act says I must keep you. And that's why I'm very keen to learn from other countries how they have sort of worked overcome that issue, because I strongly believe that if we were to, and the proof is in the pudding, many of our tourism students that were then given the opportunities to either work in Germany, and we've got a few of them there, have said, you know, they were even so amazed that their quality, their skills are so highly acclaimed over there and highly recognized. And they come back and really, that switch in terms of the attractiveness of tourism as a career is what we're hoping for, because at the moment people work for tourism because they have nothing else to do, and it's a bad paying job and the hours are bad. That's the connotation that we have for tourism, and yet we are trying to attract those people with passion and with commitment to join our industry to be able to provide the service that we do. But there are these challenges that we need to grapple around, and I'm very keen to learn from others how they've done it.
Thank you for that input. Anybody else with a comment? Okay, I see some hands at the back. Let's quickly hear that. Try to keep them brief, guys. I would like to really get to our survey so we can have a more robust conversation, but your comments are really welcome. So let's go for it. Please.
Hello, I'm an owner of a tour operating business in Windhoek, and I definitely agree with Gitta. I think the big problem is that a career in tourism is actually seen as something that you do if you can't be an accountant or doctor or something like that. So then you go for tourism. People have a completely skewed idea of what tourism is about. In the interview, I'm normally being told I love to travel and meet people, but I'm a tour operator. You're sitting behind the computer the whole day. And I think what and I would like to not blame, but put a bit of responsibility on the institutions that are training these kids and taking lots of money for the training, and then they have to pay that back later. You need to actually get them specialized from the beginning. And that's what you're not doing. When you're a doctor, you do maybe 1 year of general information, and then you become an eye specialist, or you become, a surgeon or whatever. But after 3 or 4 years, tourism students that actually come to us say, I can either be a tour guide or a chef, or it's crazy. It's like they can almost be everything in the tourism industry, but that doesn't work. So then they come and start with us, and they've done 3 or 4 years of tourism. They know nothing. They can actually take that certificate and throw it away. They don't even know where sauces flay. They don't know anything. So specialization, in my opinion, is one of the more than practical work, I would even say. Because if you start specializing, from there it's easier to find a practical job that you can go into.
Yeah, good point. Thank you very much on that. Next. All right, yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Simon Williams. I just want to make maybe, let's say, contribution, and also just to congratulate the work that we have done. During this work, when it was done, I was not able to be present, but just maybe to give a feedback that one of our colleagues who represented the global passport by AfriYoung, after this, when we have actually done that, it were candidates that we have on our program that went to do their internship in the US. And directly after this workshop, when we have done it, Avani came to us. They hired some of the staff that have returned from the US. One of the shoe chefs now in the Hilton Garden, also another candidate coming from our program. Midgard under the ONL, they hire some staff in Strand Hotel, so as well as the Onguma and NWR. So I just share with you, reflecting on the earlier presentation that has happened. I was actually very glad that we are clear that there is a critical challenges around human capital.
Yes.
And I think what is important, we need to come together quickly, both from the private sector and the institution, and try to realign, firstly, the curriculum in line to what she just said, and prioritize the skill set. And the next step that we need is to mobilize resources in terms of to say, what are the resources that we need to train, whether it's revenue management, whether it's the operational chef or anything else, and then which institution can might be head that forward.
Yeah.
I think the Namibia Investment and Promotion Board is doing great, but it's necessary to take the next step.
Yeah.
And from our side, we're just paying it forward because in some stage, I benefited from government scholarship, both from the Ministry of Environment and the NTB. And so what we are concentrating now is to actually to work with the young people to connect them to opportunity in the US. One of our partners in the US, in most cases, we have more than 200 vacancies that are available.
Yeah.
So it's German. So maybe after this, let's have a one-on-one to talk and to try to see how do we come together to really skill up and tap into the hanging fruit. Yeah.
And I must say that thank you very much for bringing that part. And I think Gitta and I would be happy to have a conversation with you, more Gitta than me, but I'm happy to be there to give my inputs because we need practical solutions. And I think as part of this, my hope is all of you, when you leave, you've got something you can take away that you can say, I can maybe apply this in my business, in my organization, and find some form of integration towards pragmatic application, right? We talk and talk and talk. For the past 100 years, Africa has been rising, wherever reason, if we're being honest with ourselves. So that has to stop. We have to actually get to action. So thank you for that comment. All right, so you and then the gentleman in front. Yeah, and before my time runs out, I want to hear all the comments. So we're going to take these two comments. We'll quickly go through the survey. If there's some time left, then the gentleman at the back, you'll be the first one to speak, yeah? My apologies for that. Time is very restricted. Please.
Right. Just for clarification purposes, I am a trainer in hospital and tourism in the vocational training, spectrum, should I say. And just want to clarify something that you have mentioned about the specialization. Specialization does take place. At level 2, we do basically a general foundational operations in the hospitality industry. But once they are done with the level 2, they have the option to specialize in either commercial cookery, housekeeping services, food and beverage services, or front office operations. So in the TVET sector, specialization does take place.
Okay, thank you for that input. Thank you so much. All right. So, yeah.
Thank you. My name is Lucas. I am also someone who's in the education sector. My question, sorry, I don't have a comment, but I just have a question on what Ms. Gitta said.
All right.
Especially the same comment that I think Mr. Simon and Ms. Bianca mentioned, that apparently that there is a certain connotation with tourism or travel within Namibia as a field to work in, right? So what are some of the specializations or some of the skills that you believe we lack here that can help improve the perception of somebody working in the tourism industry?
Gitta, do you want to briefly touch on that?
I don't think people are lacking the skills as such. It's and we had that beautiful saying by currently now our president. He was Minister of Trade at the time when Han launched our tourism awareness program, where we actually wanted to make the young people aware of the potential of building a career in tourism. It's that they said skills is one thing, but you need to have the right attitude for the job, and that very often is lacking. So yes, they would have the skills, but they're not willing to imply those skills on the job. They're not willing to get up at 6 because the bus leaves at 7. They're not willing to carry the suitcase because the porter has gone missing somewhere or ill because they've trained management. So it's that attitude rather than the actual skills, because we hear it, and Simon, your team from the Global Exchange, and we heard it from the Hansa Parks and the Living Hotels Group. Our Namibians do excel where they go out there. So we do have the skills, but we don't seem to have the passion or the right attitude towards the job. And I think, I don't know, I'll ask the academia world at some point whether they can teach attitude. because that's, I think, that the biggest skill that we're lacking. We need to be proud of what we do, even if it's washing dishes, because it needs to be done, because the gentleman or the lady coming to enjoy Namibia needs to have a clean plate.
Yes.
But we're not proud of what we do, and that pride, that attitude is something, I think that's the biggest manko that we have.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Gitta, for touching on that. This is a conversation that could go on and on and on. And sir, at the back, you're not forgotten. You'll get a chance. And I really hope that we have time for him to speak. This side has been very quiet. So we're going to try and get some responses from some of you. So according to the survey here, 47% of this room say they would rather have a conversation or lunch with Barack Obama. And interesting enough, there was a balance between Donald Trump and Walt Disney at 24%. And the least 6% want to speak to Angelina Jolie. That's interesting. So I see that, it is rather an interesting outcome. So from this side, one person, I would like to just hear, what are your thoughts on this outcome of the results? Just one person. Anyone willing to share? Yes?
It is proven that Angelina Jolie had the highest IQ
Of those people, right? Okay, all right, okay, that's one. Any other comment? I mean, this side, if you have a comment, please just, you can just shout it out as well. We don't have to wait for the mic due to time. Any other comments on this? Okay, so the reason why we actually asked you this question is really that you realize that we tend to resonate with leaders. We tend to resonate with people that are clear in their mandate, clear from the point they're at and where they're going and so on and so forth. And I can see the highest here turned out to be Obama. And if you look at his track record as a leader, forget him being the president of the United States. He didn't actually need to be president, but him just as an orator, yeah, he's very charismatic. It's easy to follow him. And the reason why it's like that is he was able to really communicate his standpoint. And he was also able to see that through in his character and who he was. He's not perfect, for sure. Politicians tend to have parts of them that bigger parts of other populations don't like, yet another portion really seems to like that. And we just wanted to see what your thoughts were. So that's a really interesting comment. Thank you for sharing that. The next question was, with two words, how can we make tourism and hospitality sexy again? And I think this is really the question that's hot in the room, right? And I use that word specifically because I think that the attractiveness of our sector is somehow misunderstood. And that has really come through from the comments that most of you have given. There's a need for specialization or integration within the specialization and so on and so forth. And I see here some of the really outstanding words here. The most popular out of all the words that came out was personalized, right? Which again goes back to remarks that Gitta gave. And we can't replace people. Right, and I can speak as an expert in AI integration because my field is applied AI integration into business operations, and what we have discovered, we ran a study with Instagram. We actually tested to see how long it takes a person to make a decision while watching a video and processing the content and so on and so forth. And what we realized is we showed 3 different videos which were set up in very different ways. And people loved authentic videos more than all the videos we saw. And with every authentic video, they were ready to go to that destination. So this shows you again, personalized experiences are the dream. They are the goal. And something about a personalized experiences, Gitta and I can both experience Windhoek as visitors here for IF. But if I go and I spend the night in a Kambashu in Katutura there, Katutura is one of our high-density suburbs, my experience is automatically different from hers, right? Because now what I get to say is, yes, we were in Windhoek together, but you must remember one night I was in Katutura and what I saw there was amazing. I could be lying, but it's my personalized experience, right? And I think that really creates a special and what we would call a magical moment in hospitality. Third question was, with one word, how can tech subsidies assist hospitality, human capital investment and growth? We spoke of the NTA. Thank you for bringing that up. Thank you, Leanne, for that comment with the approach that FEDASA took. Did I say that correctly? All right. I think we do need these instruments, right, to really propel our industry. Because without individuals or organizations that are willing to carry through the mission, then it will be very difficult to do it. And hence I asked this question, and I think the most popular answer was actually training, you know? And you realize, again, we're back to the training. We're back to, as I mentioned earlier, we need to work from the solution to find the solution that we need. Because if we focus on just what's wrong, we'll be stuck on what's wrong. But if we focus on what we want to be right, and that can just like work our way through, it would actually be easier, I would presume. Last question was for fun. And I asked, should governance standardize SOPs for tourism and hospitality on an international level? And most of you said yes, actually, 59%. That's interesting. Now, on that point, this is where I want us to have a closing discussion. I think we can steal 5 to 10 minutes, seeing that we started a little bit later than planned. But before we talk about this specific point, I want to give the gentleman at the back, as I promised, a chance to give his remark. And then if anybody else would like to make a comment on this, I really want to hear why you guys think we should standardize SOPs, right? But sir, please, you've got a moment.
Thank you so much. My name again is Samara Machel. I'm from the academia. I've been lecturing for the last 15 years at Macquarie University, and I've also been a practitioner. There are two things that I wanted to respond to. One is on internships. Back in Uganda, from the tracer studies that have been conducted, internship has never been a solution to a practicum training. Training, whether it is balanced between theoretical and practical assessments, this has to be from foundation level 1. The ideology of teaching, if you're teaching a bachelor's of hospitality training or bachelor's of tourism training, and you want a student to master or specialize in foundation 2, I think that's where we go wrong. What we need to do as part of the curriculum, we must be very intentional. If at all an institution, if it's a university that is training and does not have maybe the clear apparatus or equipment in terms of giving practicums, then they must be having a relationship with the university, such that when one is talking about hotel management, from day one they understand what happens in Uganda. Tourism, much as we say it's everyone's business, but that's not true. That the fact is that when we send out, when a student applies to do a bachelor's in hotel management, we send them to the field to go dirty in the first 1 week. And then we find that many are dropping out because they cannot really manage the situations there, the work environment and all that. Other than making someone take a 4-year course, and at the end of the day realize that they are nowhere. The same approach happens in Kenya, at Kenya Waterloo College. The same approach happens at Cornell University of School Administration, where I did my master's. So I think the approach on making a balance between theoretical and practical assessments, it has to be from day one. If it's a tour operator, you're teaching a student foundation 1, they go to 2, and they want to be specialized. They can't even come out to make an itinerary. You want them to go and learn from someone's tour company, to make lots of mistakes because one is a travel consultant, and this is very costly. So I think it is about being intentional with the programs, seeing that from day one, you make me appreciate that the course I'm joining, this is the kind of work environment and these are the expectations. Today's environment, a student, when they join, the first time they join, they want to, I think it's about arrivalism, thinking that we are really out there, and yet it's not really the case. So must be clear balance between practical and theoretical assessments have to start from day one, and shouldn't wait for internship sessions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. If I may comment, that was one of the arguments that we also had, and it's a commercial question because some, I don't say all, but some of the tertiary institutions are very keen to get students. So whether the students like the course or not, they would enroll them because the students, like was said, they pay for the course. So it was a commercial question of some of the tertiary institutions or the academia, and where we said, actually, before you enroll a student in a certain course, make them go on a practical, make them work at Wimpy's or wherever else for 6 weeks for them to be able, because we had cases here in Namibia where a student for the hospitality course went to the lecturer 2 weeks into the course to say, but ma'am, when are we now going into the hospital? Because she didn't even understand the concept hospitality. And that's the problem. So had she gone for a 6 weeks training course in a cafe or a restaurant somewhere, she would have understood the concept and then be committed to tourism or not. But it's a commercial question of some of the academic institutions who are very keen to enroll students for the commercial gains thereof, but not for the outcome. Thanks.
Thank you very much for those comments. So yeah, let's, I take it you've got something you'd like to say? Okay, good. Yeah, let's talk about the SOPs now. Please.
Yeah, I think, thank you very much. My name is Peter-Hain. I'm specialized in cultural tourism. Mine was more in support with what I think Bianca has said and what you guys are speaking about in terms of specialization in terms of the field that you are doing. That is very crucial. I don't know if the institutions that are training these people, when they send them out for 6 months, for example, if they are monitoring this on a daily basis, and that is very key. Because really, sometimes the attitudes that we are getting from these students, it's very, you could tell, it's not about the passion, it's about having that degree or honors and then going to work and make profit, money. But if there are specialization in those fields, and then they go dirty in the real sense of the word, like my friend from Uganda have said, it's very key in tourism because tourism is more hands-on experience. It's very key.
Thank you for that comment. And we couldn't agree more. I think the consensus in the room has really been, once again, integration, right? I think we definitely need the theoretical aspects. Personally, I can speak from my own journey. And I went through the different sections or factions of tourism and hospitality. Worked as a tour guide, worked in the hotel, worked in the restaurant, was a shuttle transfer driver, and so on. This is during my studies. And I think that was so valuable to me because I was able to really link what I was learning in class and what was really happening in the field. So much that even in some of my exams, there were things I didn't even agree with because like this theory isn't actually right because it's not what's happening. And I queried this with my lecturers quite a lot. I was that student. I'm sure it frustrated them, unfortunately for them, but really there was a lot that I had questions on because I was working in the field at the time. So I can testify to the benefits of an integrated experience of learning, you know, and that continued for me when I moved to Austria. I've been based in Austria now 3 years. I did my master there in innovation and management, and we were basing, again, our training and development protocols, even our research, on an integrated approach. And you can see amazing results on an integrated approach. What we just showed you, we did that in 3 days, right? About 3 days. That's an integrated approach, right? We had people present, experts, who could give us real information, real data that we could analyze in that moment. We integrated the AI aspect and we're able to actually say, okay, we think this is what it's saying. And as you can see, true to itself, the consensus in this room, this is 2 years later, we are still on the same point and we agree to a greater extent. So that shows you that it's possible if it's done right. So let me hear some more comments. Yes, there's a hand over there. Do we have a mic nearby? No, we would like to hear you better. Please, let's get her mic. Thank you guys so much. I love how you guys are really cooperative, passing the mic with each other. That's really helpful. Yes.
What we are talking about is about the attractivity of the sector and our capacity, each of us, actors of the hospitality sector, to retain people and give them perspective. So this is not only a training, education, it is each and every person's role. I was discussing with Lara earlier. We operate 12 hotels in Africa, and the only hotel in which I have the lowest attrition rate is the hotel in Uganda, Kampala. The day we opened that hotel, we had 300 people, 300 staff there. And the investor, he was giving his speech, and he said to those people, when I was your age, I was barefoot. Now I own this hotel, and I wish you guys, you will earn enough money and be successful and own your own hotels. So this is giving the vision. It's everybody's responsibility in this sector to give the proper level of respect for those who come to us, to give them perspective and to give them ambition. If they see they have a future, they stay. So in this hotel, I still have 70% of the people who joined 7 years ago. And this is the only hotel I have in this case. And it goes with this vision that the investor shared. So people who work there, they know that the investor, the owner, have this ambition for them. So this is what will make a difference, I think, in getting this field attractive. They should not stay housekeeper, bellboys, whatever, all their career, but they can go and grow, and this is what we need to share. This is my...
One of the elements that we also try to push as well is because we had students that when they were asked, why did you choose a career in tourism or a course in tourism, they said, because I want to travel, not because I want to work in tourism. And that's why we said, okay, let's offer them that opportunity by creating those exchange programs where we engage. And Simon has got a beautiful example of where he takes youngsters to the American market. He's linked up with some of the companies there, or we've got links to some of the to our source market in Germany. And these youngsters would then come back and say, wow, you know, we saw the world. One of the minor group hotels took one of the Namibians to Dubai. And I mean, Dubai is a different world. Yes, they've also got desert, but the vibe and the speed in Dubai is so different to Namibia. But that Namibian youngster came back wanting to work in Namibia, so confident of himself because what he had learned here and what he applies to the hotel here in Windhoek, the same skills apply in Dubai. And that elevation, that realization that he's an international skilled person is what really proved me. Exactly.
Exposure, yeah.
Yeah, exposure.
Exposure is another element.
Exactly. And that's why that interchange to us is very important as well. And it seems to work, Simon, for your people as well. And they come back to, you just quoted that they came back to 3 or 4 hotels in Namibia, not wanting to stay in America, but coming back. And that's key for us as well, obviously, because we want to skill our own people.
What I would say is, I think as part of the roadmap, I mean, we didn't keep it on the screen so long enough. The vehicle also was going to, or is planning to find ways to source funding and opportunities which are funded for the local students, for that exposure to happen, because it's costly. And you realize that the programs we have are tailored to be local. And that's a mindset that has to shift, and also the development process for that still has to happen. And that will take brainstorming, that will take collaboration, and that's all part of the vehicle. So given the time that we started, I've got about 3 minutes to conclude. And I'd like to thank you guys for being here. But before we close up, Gitta and I, we want to hear if anybody has one last comment or a question or something that you really would like to share with the rest of the room. Okay, we've got 2 hands, all right. Let's make it brief.
Okay, you had a question on if SOPs must be the same. I want to link it to the new tourist. The new tourist want someone to be intentional. They want service to be about them. So imagine you come to Hilton Windhoek, the service is this way. You travel to the north, the service is different. This person will have a mixed feelings. They are not going to experience Namibia as they would want it to be. So if we standardize SOPs, this is how we will be able to cater to the new tourist. And by the way, tourism is still sexy. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. We like that passion. Yeah, go on.
Okay, is it on? Yeah. I always hear today that we're talking about the staff. And then my question is, what do you consider staff? Because our experience, or my wife's and mine experience very often is that it's not the staff problem. It's more an upper management and leading management problem. You have people that are taking over a hotel that do not know how to run a hotel, maybe have not even been to a luxury hotel, and they are not able to transport this knowledge to the lower staff. And that is, from my opinion, one of the biggest issues that we have all over Namibia.
Thank you guys for that input. I think it's a different perspective. Gitta briefly touched on this, and before another lady, I think she's left now, Bianca, she touched on a specialization in the trainings. So you'd realize that this is also an issue that goes back to training institutions because a lot of these people are coming out of training institutions. That was touched on earlier, again, within the integrating efforts to say, if someone is going to, say, run an establishment, right, that they have been through the ropes, practically and theoretically. And I think where you're coming from is really somebody that is well-seasoned. And you cannot be well-seasoned if you're only one-sided. So the example you use of people that you have raised up and they're now working overseas and so on and so forth, you would realize that they will face limitations, those people, if they have to open their own establishments. And some of those people who have gone out, they may maybe save up some money and try to come back and open their own establishments. Then they struggle or fail to transfer the knowledge. Why? Because the theory is actually just equally as important as the practical experience. Because you cannot train practically finance management, for example, because the world works on specific systems that have to be practiced theoretically over a period of time in a very specific manner. On that point, we are all in agreement. I think there is consensus in the room that we want that. And the roadmap was really our effort of trying to go in that direction. Gitta, I don't know if you'd like to add on to this as well.
Now, in terms of, and that's why this conference is such, talking about investment in hospitality, to me was also not investing only and having people with lots of money investing just for the sake of investing in a commercial property, but investing in human capital. And it's only people that really have passion for the industry that could then run hotels like you seem to be doing, that can then, you know, transfer that kind of skills and knowledge. It's more about a skills transfer. And that's why, you know, when somebody says, where can I, and we had it before COVID and after COVID, yeah, I see there's money to be made in tourism, so I want to invest in tourism, but they came from the construction industry, for instance. And that's where the challenge lies. So we don't want to open up ourselves and be sort of, I shouldn't use the word, but I'm just going to say it, prostituting ourselves just to invite investors here for the sake of investors. We need the right type of investors that have passion and the right attitude towards our industry to actually build it to where we want to be. We cannot copy, you know, other tourism destinations that really, you know, shine in terms of the economic spin-off. If we build our industry with the right attitude, then I think that's how we should approach it, and not you know, go after it just for the money at all.
But overall, it's great to look at both perceptions. And thank you for bringing that view in. And, you know, hence we have these workshops because we can all learn from each other. And I think collectively, in research, we call this a social constructivist approach or a view where we build on a collective knowledge, you know, collective understanding. And sometimes it's generic, sometimes it's educational, but when put together, you can really make something great out of it. So thank you for sharing that. And thanks to all of you for contributing. Nobody is knocking on that door to have us out of here, and I'm concluding. But if there's one person that really has something that they want to share, we want to give you the chance. And then we can close up. Is there anyone that really has a burning comment? Okay, there was another hand. There was another hand. Let's just hear from the gentleman. Yes, let's hear from him. Yeah, if he's brief enough, you can get another chance.
Thank you. Do I have to stand up? Okay. Thank you so much for such an engaging session. I'm coming from the training providers. I think there is something about training, the investment in human capital. We've been training for quite some time, and there was a shift, I think, from 2012 to 2017, where we needed to listen to the industry. I think Gitta here and many others, they told us what they wanted. Customer service, front office operations, housekeeping, specifics. And it helped us raise a new generation of students who have since graduated. But one thing that I've picked is we can teach in the classroom, but we also have to have common sense. We have this event, for example, today. Our students are coming on the 27th. I'll give them an assignment, a very simple one. Can you check how much was used in terms of toilet rolls? How much of water do you think was used? How much do you think was electricity use? For coffee, how much do you think were the kgs of coffee beans? They need to get the basics. If you're going to be a manager, you need to know the bottom line. Okay, where are the overheads? If you're using gas, how much of gas are you using per month? It's something else when a student has common sense. Okay, you can't be moving around. How is the food? How is the food? And the tables are not cleared. What are you asking about? The floor is wet. Can't you dry it up? And so we need to train, but it now involves that experience that Mem was talking about.
Yeah.
You need to have gone through it.
Yeah.
So most of the training providers and the lecturers, we actually want now those from the industry to come in as guest lecturers and impart this knowledge and skills. This roadmap, I think it worked very well because it opens up those who are in the industry to go to the lecture halls and speak common sense.
Yeah.
Etiquette, how do you answer the call? How do you multitask?
Yeah.
what is important? Do you have to be mechanical or you have to be human? How do you smile? You can be smiling, but your eyes are cold.
Yeah.
A guest can pick that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone. And really, Gitta and I are still here for a couple of more minutes. I hope she doesn't have to run anywhere. If you have questions or you want to still have a brief chat and so on, we're open to that. But I'm bringing this session to a close. Once again, thank you very much for a very interactive session.